Feng Shui can kill. It kills without a trace, ending bloodlines and causing sudden, violent deaths. But Feng Shui can also nurture. It can bring wealth, power, and a thriving family. It can even preserve a corpse in a sacred spot, allowing it to transcend the mortal coil and achieve immortality. You might not believe in fate or Feng Shui, but for thousands of years, China's emperors and elites were obsessed with it. If you work hard but stay broke, if you're handsome and rich but can't find a wife, or if your life is just one disaster after another, it's not necessarily bad luck. It's likely your family's Feng Shui. My name is Li Chengfeng. My great-great-grandfather, Li Jinshan, was the top Feng Shui master for the Qing dynasty's imperial court. My grandfather, Li Tianqing, followed in his footsteps. He was a master of Yin and Yang, the 8 gates, and ancient secret arts. I grew up at my grandfather's side, soaking up his knowledge. By the time I was 22, I had inherited his deepest secrets. Grandfather used to run a shop called Suiyuan Hall in the coastal city of Qingzhou. He interpreted dreams, picked names, and cured strange illnesses. He could see both the world of the living and the dead. People flocked to him for help with their careers, their fortunes, or their tragedies. But 2 years ago, he closed the shop. He was old and disabled. He bought a small farmhouse by the sea and retired into seclusion. After I graduated from college, life hit me hard. I couldn't find a job, and my girlfriend of 2 years dumped me because I was poor and going nowhere. One evening, after another failed interview, I bought some liquor and food and went to see my grandfather. After 2 drinks, I finally said it. "Grandpa, I want to reopen Suiyuan Hall." "No," he snapped. He didn't even hesitate. He looked at me with his one remaining eye, his gaze heavy and complicated. "Look at me, Chengfeng. This is what happens when you look into the secrets of the world for others. If you don't want to end up like me, never mention that shop again." I looked at him and felt a pang of guilt. My grandfather was blind in one eye and missing a leg. He spent his days in a wheelchair. He always said he had revealed too many heavenly secrets and tried to change too many fates. This was his divine punishment. He finished his drink and sighed deeply. "I'm doing this for your own good. People in our line of work rarely come to a good end. I just want you to be a normal man. Get married, have kids, and live a quiet life." Then, he started telling me stories about my great-great-grandfather, Li Jinshan. I poured him another drink and sat down, listening intently. The story began at the end of the Qing dynasty. Li Jinshan was watching the stars when he saw the emperor's star fading. The dynasty was doomed. Knowing the end was near, he traded his official robes for a Taoist gown and fled the capital. He wandered the country, eventually running out of money. He set up a stall on the street, offering to read faces and write letters just to get a meal. But those were desperate times. People barely had enough to eat, let alone pay for a fortune teller. He lived hand-to-mouth, hiding his identity as a former official until he reached the borders of Qingzhou. He looked like a beggar. He was so hungry his stomach touched his spine. Desperate, he used a stone to write his services on the ground. Dream interpretation, face reading, curing strange illnesses. He sat there for 2 days and 2 nights. No one came. Finally, the greatest Feng Shui master of the Qing dynasty fainted from hunger on the street. He should have died there, but fate had other plans. A wealthy merchant named Chen Tinghai happened to walk by. He noticed an exquisite jade pendant on the unconscious man's belt. It was carved with the words, "Imperial Decree." When Li Jinshan woke up, he was in a soft bed. Pretty maids attended to him, and the table was covered in meat and wine. After he ate his fill, he met his savior, Chen Tinghai. They hit it off, and Li Jinshan stayed at the Chen estate for 6 months, treated like royalty. Eventually, the guilt of living off Chen's charity got to him. He wondered why this man was being so kind without asking for anything in return. One night, after several drinks, Chen Tinghai finally revealed his sorrow. "Brotherly," Chen said, "I have immense wealth, yet I am over 40 and have no children. Why? Why does heaven treat me this way?" Li Jinshan was surprised. He had already read Chen's face. According to his features, Chen should have been a poor, hard-working man with no money, but he should have had 2 sons and a daughter. Instead, he was incredibly rich and childless. His fate had been flipped. "Brother Chen," Li Jinshan said, "your face says you should have many children. Something is wrong with your destiny. You can read faces? Chen asked, feigning surprise. Li Jinshan nodded. The next day, he took his compass to inspect the Chun family's properties. The house was fine, so the problem had to be in the ancestral graveyard. When they arrived at the family tombs, Li Jinshan gasped. Brother Chun, I wasn't wrong. This is a top-tier Feng Shui burial site. It's a gold under the pillow formation. Chen Tinghai smiled. You have a sharp eye? My ancestor's tomb was specifically chosen for that wealth-attracting luck. But Li Jinshan frowned as he stared at the grave. He realized the truth. Gold under the pillow brought endless wealth, but it came at a price. It cut off the family line entirely. I looked at the Chen family's ancestral graves and let out a long, heavy sigh. I knew the truth now, and it was grim. Brother Chun, I said, I don't know if I should speak my mind. Speak freely, little brother, Chen Tinghai replied, his voice urgent. I took 2 steps forward, my eyes fixed on the tomb. My expression was dead serious. Brother Chun, the gold under the pillow formation brings wealth, but it cuts off your bloodline. You have no children because of this very spot. This formation demands an incredible amount of ancestral merit. If your family's karma isn't deep enough, it strikes at the roots. It ensures you are the last of your name. Chen Tinghai feigned a look of pure terror. He acted as if the realization had just hit him. What use is all this money if I have no one to leave it to? He cried out. His voice trembled with desperation. Little brother, what do I do? Is it my fate to die alone? I need a place of blessing. I need a site that will give me sons and grandsons. I frowned, thinking it over. There is a way, I muttered, but I didn't even finish my sentence before Chen Tinghai was beaming with hope. He grabbed my arm, begging, help me. I don't want my line to end. Who will inherit my fortune? Please, you have to help me. I hesitated, my heart sinking. The problem was that the Feng Shui had already altered Chen Tinghai's destiny. To force a change now meant defying heaven itself. I would be inviting a curse upon my own head. Brother Chun, your fate is already set, I said, feeling the weight of the situation. I am powerless. If you want to change this, you must do good deeds. Accumulate merit. Perhaps then, things will shift naturally. Suddenly, Chen Tinghai dropped to his knees. Tears streamed down his face as he sobbed at my feet. Little brother, I know you have a way. Don't let my family die out. I'm begging you. It's not that I don't want to help, I told him, trying to pull him up. But if I change your fate against the will of heaven, I will be punished. At best, I'll be blinded or crippled for the rest of my life. At worst, I'll be struck dead by lightning. I tried to refuse him, but he wouldn't let go. He used the one thing he knew would work, the debt I owed him. Little brother, he cried, clutching my legs, think of how I saved your life. For the sake of that kindness, please. I will never forget what you do for me. If heaven punishes you, if you become disabled, I swear I will treat you like my own father. I will care for you until the day you die and give you a proper burial. My heart softened. I was a man who believed in repaying debts. If it weren't for him, I would have starved to death on the streets long ago. I took a deep breath. Fine, I said. I will change your fate. But remember your promise today. If I am struck down, you must look after me. Chen Tinghai nodded vigorously, his eyes shining. My word is my bond. I will do exactly as I said. I looked at his face and felt a bitter smile tug at my lips. Whether he kept his word or not, I had to do this to settle my debt of gratitude. I chose an auspicious day to move his parents' remains. A year ago, while I was wandering as a refugee, I had found a legendary Feng Shui spot called the Leopard's Den of 7 Seeds. It was a top-tier site, perfect for what he wanted. I led Chen Tinghai to the location deep in the mountains. He stood there, speechless. A single peak pierced the clouds, surrounded by 7 smaller hills like petals around a flower. It was a masterpiece of nature. Will this really give me children? He asked, his voice shaking with excitement. Yes, I replied. This is a granting sons formation. Those 7 peaks represent 7 sons. We followed the rituals, burying his parents' bones in the heart of the den and building 7 symbolic empty tombs nearby. The moment the last shovelful of dirt was placed, the earth groaned. The sky was clear, yet thunder roared like a physical weight. Bolts of lightning tore through the blue, striking the ground around us. I turned pale with terror. Chen Tinghai scrambled back, screaming, "What's happening?" I tried to answer, but my vision began to blur. Colors bled into gray, and gray faded into a thick, impenetrable ink. The world vanished. I was blind. I knew the price would be high, but I hadn't expected the blow to fall so fast. Within a year, the miracle happened. Chen Tinghai's concubines, and even his aging wife began to give birth. One after another, 7 sons were born. This 7 seeds prophecy had come true. For the first 2 years, Chen Tinghai kept his word. He gave me the best room and fed me the finest meats. But as time passed, the novelty of his gratitude wore off. Seeing a blind man eating his food for free started to grate on him. The warmth in his voice turned to disgust. He forgot his oath entirely. Soon, I was kicked out of the guest room and dragged to a drafty, rotting stable. My gourmet meals were replaced by table scraps. Furious, I demanded to speak with him. He didn't just ignore me, he beat me. That was when he told me the truth. He hadn't saved me out of kindness 2 years ago. He had seen the imperial decree medallion I carried and realized I was a high-level feng shui master fleeing the palace. He took me in and fed me only to manipulate me into finding him a lucky grave site. Now that he had his 7 sons and I was a useless blind man, I was nothing but a burden. It was all a trap. I screamed at him, calling him an ungrateful dog, swinging my arms wildly in the dark to strike him. He just kicked me to the dirt and ordered his men to lock me in the stable. I was forced to eat and sleep with the horses. I lived in that filth for over 10 years. I became a skeletal shadow of the man I once was. My life didn't change until a young boy named Li Tianqing appeared. He was only a teenager then, hired as a short-term laborer to tend the horses. The first time he saw me, he backed away in horror. I looked more like a ghost than a human. But over time, I started talking to him. I asked him about his life, telling him not to be afraid. Slowly, we became friends. We became unlikely friends, 2 men separated by a generation but bound by the same walls. As our bond grew, I finally told Li Tianqing my story. I told him how Chen Tinghai had used me, betrayed me, and discarded me like trash. Tianqing was furious. He couldn't believe a man could be so ungrateful and cruel. After 6 months, I decided to take him as my disciple. I taught him everything I knew, the complex formations, the secret chants, and the precise art of feng shui. His talent was incredible. He had a natural intuition for the craft. I only had to teach him a technique once, and he mastered it. During our long talks, Tianqing told me what was happening outside the stable. He told me how Chen Tinghai had become a local tyrant, a monster who bullied the weak and treated human life like grass. Hearing this, I sat leaned against the rotting stable wall in silence for 15 days. I was consumed by regret. I finally understood why my divine punishment had come so swiftly. I had given a demon the tools to rule. Years blurred together. Over a decade passed in that filth. Chen Tinghai's power grew until he was the emperor of Qingzhou City. His 7 sons were either powerful military officers or married into elite families. They were untouchable. Meanwhile, Tianqing had worked for the Chun family for years without receiving a single penny. When he finally dared to ask for his wages, they beat him half to death. He crawled back to the stable, trembling with rage and humiliation. He told me about the latest atrocities, how the Chun family stole land and ruined lives without a second thought. My blood boiled. My hands shook so hard I could barely feel my cane. Tianqing, I whispered, my voice raspy from years of neglect. I want you to do something. Do you have the courage? Master, he said, his voice firm. As long as it isn't something evil, I'll do anything. Good. I want you to destroy the lotus holding the sun's feng shui formation I built for the Qin family. We are going to wipe this plague from Qingzhou. He didn't hesitate. I'll do it. He wanted justice for me, and he wanted peace for the people. I felt a flicker of pride. I hadn't wasted my time training him. I leaned in close and whispered the secret to breaking the curse. Listen carefully. You must go on the night of the full moon, just as the sun is dipping below the horizon. Hide behind the graves of Chen Tinghai's parents. When the moon rises, you will see green smoke and a golden lotus blossom on top of the mound. 7 seeds will fly out and turn into 7 children. Then, an old couple will emerge from the earth to play with them. Don't be afraid. Wait for your moment, run to the top of the grave, and rip that lotus out by its roots. Then run. And whatever you do, Tianqing, do not look back. What happens if I look back, master? He asked. You'll die? Remember that. Tianqing had studied under me for 10 years, but he had never seen real magic. He thought I was exaggerating, but he agreed to go. That night, under the full moon, he crawled behind the grave mound and waited. He was so bold, he actually fell asleep. A sudden, icy wind woke him up. He looked at the sky. The moon was high. At first, there was nothing. He started to grumble, thinking I was just a senile old man telling tall tales. But as he stood up to leave, the air turned freezing. Green smoke began to swirl. A beam of moonlight hit the grave like a spotlight, and a golden lotus shimmered into existence. It was exactly as I had described. 7 seeds popped out, hitting the ground and transforming into 7 pale children. Grandpa, Grandma, come play with us, they chirped in eerie, high-pitched voices. Coming, children. We're coming, a raspy voice answered from underground. An old man and woman drifted out of the dirt like mist. Tianqing's heart hammered against his ribs. He was terrified, but he remembered his mission. While the spirits were distracted, he lunged. He scrambled up the mound, grabbed the golden lotus, and ripped it out with all his might. The screaming started instantly. A howling wind tore at his clothes. He heard the children wailing and the old man roaring. Give it back. You're destroying our family's future. I'll kill you. Tianqing bolted. He ran like a man possessed. My warning echoed in his head, don't look back. But curiosity is a powerful thing. He couldn't help it. He turned his head just an inch. He saw the spirits, distorted, monstrous faces, floating in the air, claws reaching for his throat. He screamed, his face turning pale as death, and ran until his lungs burned. He collapsed into the stable, gasping for air. When he told me he had looked back, I was shocked he was still alive. You lucky brat, I laughed. You actually did it. The lotus holding the suns was broken. I laughed until the horses panicked and kicked at their stalls. My work here was done. That night, Tianqing carried me on his back, and we disappeared into the darkness, leaving the Chun estate forever. The collapse began within 2 weeks. Chen Tinghai didn't know his luck had run out. He was in his mansion, cradling his newborn grandson, whispering about how he would teach the boy to crush the commoners. Suddenly, the baby's eyes closed. He thought the child had fallen asleep. But the boy never woke up. Then, the messages started arriving. One by one, in less than a month, all 7 of Chen Tinghai's sons died in freak accidents. The debt of his cruelty was finally being paid in full. The death toll didn't stop with Chen Tinghai's sons. One by one, his dozen or so grandchildren also met with strange, sudden ends. It was only then that Chen Tinghai realized something was horribly wrong. He rushed to the stables to find Li Jinshan, but my great-grandfather was long gone. All that remained were 8 words scrawled on the wall. Commit many injustices, and you shall die without heirs. Chen Tinghai searched everywhere for him, but he couldn't find so much as a shadow. He was forced to watch, helpless, as every single person in his bloodline died before him. The blow was too much for his mind to handle. He went completely insane. Years later, I heard he died during a heavy blizzard. They found him frozen solid, curled up on top of his parents' grave. Evil always meets its match. Chen Tinghai had used feng shui to defy fate and steal a fortune, but the moment the lotus holding the sun's formation was broken, the debt came due. Everything he had gained, he lost tenfold. If he had done good deeds and built up merit, his end might not have been so tragic. My grandfather, Li Tianqing, finished telling the story and drained his wine glass. His face was a mask of deep reflection, lost in the memories of his own father. As the descendant of the Chiman feng shui lineage, I felt a chill run down my spine. To think that the legendary Great Blue Sky Sword, the greatest feng shui master, had been tricked by a common man. I wanted to reopen our family shop, Sui Yuan Hall, so I pretended to be skeptical. Grandpa, I said with a grin, that's a great story. Can you make up another one? You silly boy, he huffed. I'm not making up stories. If you don't believe me, go under the bed. Drag out that trunk and look for a small box inside. Open it, and you'll see if I'm lying. I pulled the heavy trunk out and found an exquisitely crafted little box. When I flipped the lid, I froze. Inside was a golden lotus pod. It had 7 distinct holes, but the seeds were gone. Beneath it lay a petrified lotus root. "Grandpa, is this it?" I stammered. "The one you pulled from the grave?" "That is the seven-sun lotus," he said, his voice thick with pride. "It was formed from the spiritual energy of the earth and the essence of the moon. It's a treasure that appears once in 1,000 years. There might not be another one like it in the world." He had kept it all these years, not just as a treasure, but as a memento of great-grandfatherly Jinshan. Holding it in my hands, my heart raced. I realized then that there are things in this world science simply cannot explain. Feng Shui is one of them. Looking at my grandfather's crippled body, I had originally thought about giving up on Sui Yuan Hall. But in that moment, I made my choice. Even if I ended up like him, I had to reopen the shop. I had to explore these mysteries. Grandfather saw the hunger in my eyes and shook his head helplessly. "It's over," he muttered. "The boy is obsessed." He looked like he regretted telling me the story at all. "Grandpa," I said, my voice steady and firm, "I've made up my mind. I'm reopening Sui Yuan Hall." He didn't speak. He just poured another drink, downed it, and chewed slowly on a piece of braised pork. After a long silence, he finally looked up. "Xiaofeng, once you step onto this path, you are destined to be alone. Poverty, isolation, and disability will follow you. You will be barred from wealth, power, and a normal life. You might even face heavenly punishment for revealing the secrets of the universe. Are you not afraid?" "I'm not," I replied instantly. "As long as I do good and accumulate merit, I can change my fate." Grandfather sighed. He had found me in a trash can over 10 years ago and taken me in. Perhaps it was always meant to be this way. He had hoped I'd get a regular job, find a wife, and live a quiet life, but that dream was dead now. "Fine," he said. "It's your choice. Don't regret it." "I won't." "Then I'll allow it. Today, you will honor the ancestors, and I will open your Dharma eye. I will pass you the command of the heavens and officially initiate you into the sect." He reached into his clothes and pulled out a jade tablet. It was small, about the size of a matchbox. On the front were the words, "Command of the Heavens." On the back was a dragon, so lifelike it looked ready to fly. In ancient times, this was the symbol of authority for a Feng Shui master. Following his instructions, I performed the ritual, 3 prostrations and 9 kowtows to the Chiman ancestor, Guapu. I washed my eyes with heavenly water and cleansed my body with earth soil. When the ritual was over, I took the Sanha compass in my hands. I was a true Feng Shui master now. Grandfather looked at me with a solemn expression. "Xiaofeng, from today on, you are the 108th successor of the Chiman sect. Your eyes can now see the balance of yin and yang and the movements of the stars. Your body can sense the dragon veins of the earth. Remember, do good deeds. Only merit can protect you from the heavens. Never use your skills to harm others, or you will be destroyed." "I will remember, Grandpa," I said, my heart pounding with excitement. He rolled his wheelchair to the bed and pulled out another box. Inside was a bag, which he told me to empty onto the table. A set of keys tumbled out, followed by 9 tortoise shells and a bundle of ancient bamboo slips. They looked incredibly old. "These are the keys to Sui Yuan Hall," he said, handing them to me. "They're yours now." I took the keys, but my eyes were glued to the shells and the slips. "What are these for?" "I don't know," he admitted. "Your great-grandfather passed them to me. He said if anyone could crack the code on these shells, they would find a massive opportunity. But the script is too difficult." I picked up a shell. It was covered in dense, ancient characters. They looked like oracle bone script, but even older. Grandfather told me he had consulted experts and professors his whole life, and none of them could read a single word. One professor guessed it might be the celestial script of the human race, a language that predates history itself. I packed the items away, my mind swirling with questions. What was written on them? What kind of opportunity was hidden there? If this script was older than the earliest known Chinese writing, what kind of world did it come from? The next morning, after a quick breakfast, I took the keys to Sui Yuan Hall and said goodbye to my grandfather. I walked out of our little seaside courtyard and boarded the bus, ready to begin my new life. I arrived in the old district of Qingzhou. The streets were lined with tall plane trees, their branches heavy with fuzzy little seed balls. Shops crowded both sides of the road, and pedestrians drifted by in small groups. I clutched the keys in my hand, my pace light and eager. I stopped in front of a shop. The door was locked tight with a rusted iron padlock. Above it hung a weathered plaque. 3 large characters were painted in cinnabar red, Swayuan Hall. The paint was peeling from years of neglect. Beneath the main name, smaller letters listed the services: dream interpretation, naming, feng shui, and treatment for incurable diseases. I slid the key into the lock and pushed the door open. A wave of musty air hit me instantly. No one had lived here or cleaned the place in a long time. The interior was simple, with plain white walls. On the back wall hung a portrait of the great master, Guopu. A small caption in the corner read, "Guopu observing the mountains." Below the portrait sat an altar table with an incense burner and 2 candle stands. I was so busy scanning the layout that I didn't notice the eyes on the portrait. The moment I stepped inside, the master's eyelids flickered. His painted eyes followed my every move. The shop wasn't huge, maybe 30 square meters. There was a small bedroom in the back and a reception area in the front. Against the far wall sat a rosewood desk and a heavy armchair. To the right of the door stood a tea table carved from a tree root and a rosewood sofa. I walked over to the tea table and knelt down. Tucked underneath were 7 copper coins. They were arranged in the shape of the Big Dipper. I remembered my grandfather telling me about this. He called it the Big Dipper house guarding layout. It was designed to welcome wealth while blocking evil spirits. I stared at the coins for a moment, making sure they hadn't been moved. Satisfied, I turned to the altar. I lit 3 sticks of incense, held them above my head, and bowed 3 times to the portrait. "Grandmaster, please bless me," I whispered. "Help your disciple bring in wealth from all directions." At that moment, all I cared about was making money and living a good life. I grabbed a cloth and started cleaning. Years of dust and thick spider webs covered everything. I was working up a sweat, head down, scrubbing away, when a voice suddenly echoed through the room. "Boy, come here. Clean my dining table." The voice was old and raspy. I jolted, my heart nearly jumping out of my chest. I spun around, eyes darting everywhere. There was no one there, just the portrait on the wall. My face went pale. Was the room haunted? I stared into every corner, pulse racing, but I saw nothing. I took a deep breath, trying to calm down. Maybe I was just hearing things. I went back to the altar and scrubbed it several times until it shone. As I worked with my head down, the figure in the portrait reached up and stroked his beard. A satisfied smile spread across his painted face. It was a good thing I didn't see it. If I had seen the Grandmaster nodding and grooming himself, I probably would have died of fright right then and there. I spent the entire morning cleaning. By noon, the place was spotless. Just as I sat down to catch my breath, a woman appeared at the door. She looked to be in her 20s and was stunningly beautiful. She wore expensive designer clothes and carried a limited edition LV bag. "Is anyone here?" she asked, peering inside. "Is Master Li in?" I stood up quickly. She was clearly looking for my grandfather. "Master Li isn't here," I said. "Can I help you with something?" "Hello, my name is Yi Mengyao," she said. "I have a matter I need Master Li's help with. Could you tell me where I can find him?" I gave her a small smile. "Miss Yi, let me introduce myself. I'm Li Chengfeng, Master Li's grandson. My grandfather has retired. He doesn't handle matters of the living or the dead anymore. If you're in trouble, you can tell me. I can solve it for you." I figured this was my first customer. I had to make a good impression. But as she looked me up and down, her expression shifted to disappointment. I was too young. I didn't look like a master at all. "Sir," she said, frowning. "Even if I told you, I doubt you could help. I really need to see Master Li. Please, where is he?" "Like I said, he's retired," I repeated firmly. "Whatever the issue is, you can talk to me." She didn't believe me for a second. "This is very important," she said, her voice tinged with desperation. "If you tell me where he is, I'll reward you handsomely." My grandfather was old and his health was failing. I wasn't about to let strangers bother him. I shook my head. I knew she only doubted me because of my age. In this business, young feng shui masters were rare. To prove myself, I decided to read her face. Her wealth palace was full and glowing. She was clearly a daughter of a wealthy family, born with a silver spoon. Then I looked at her parent palaces. There was a small mole on her mother palace, and her father palace was dark and dull. If I wasn't mistaken, her mother had passed away years ago. Her father had raised her alone, but now, his health was failing. He was likely on the brink of death. Yi Mingyao noticed me staring, and a look of disgust crossed her face. She probably thought I was just some creep. She forced a polite smile, though her voice stayed cold. "Mr. Li, please. Just take me to your grandfather. I'll pay you." "The answer is still no," I said. "Tell me your problem. I can handle it." Her face darkened. She was losing patience. She turned to leave, her shoulders slumped in disappointment. "Miss Yi," I called out suddenly. "If I'm not mistaken, you're here because of your father, right?" She froze. She turned back to me, her eyes wide with shock. How did you know that?" I just smiled. My reading was spot on. Yi Mingyao was here for her father. 2 years ago, her father, Yi Guqing, had woken up to a nightmare. For no reason at all, he was completely blind. The Yi family was wealthy, so they didn't hold back. They hired the best medical experts and flew in the most advanced equipment in the world. They poked and prodded, but every test came back with the same frustrating result. There was absolutely nothing physically wrong with his eyes. They spent millions over those 2 years, but his world remained pitch black. Finally, an old practitioner of traditional medicine suggested something different. He told her this wasn't a medical issue. It was something darker. He called it an evil possession and told her only one man could fix it, Li Tianqing of Suiyuan Hall. That was why she had been coming here every single day, only to find the doors locked. Now that the shop was finally open, she found me instead of my grandfather. I could see the crushing disappointment in her eyes. "I know why you're here," I said, trying to bridge the gap. She looked at me with pure disdain. "The whole city knows my father is sick. You probably just looked it up online. Guessing that doesn't prove anything." I frowned. It was the same old story. I was too young. In this profession, if you don't have white hair and a long beard, people think you're a fraud. I felt a flash of frustration. If I couldn't even get my first client to trust me, I might as well go work in a factory and turn screws for a living. At least then I wouldn't starve. I took a deep breath. Everything is hard the first time. I just needed to prove I had the skill. "Miss Yi," I said, my voice steady. "From your face, I can see more than just your father's illness. When you were 13, your mother died in an accident. And when you were 16, you faced a peach blossom calamity. You were bullied at school and well, you were almost assaulted." The color drained from her face. She froze. The incident from when she was 16 was a closely guarded secret. There was no way that was on the internet. "How do you know that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Did you investigate me?" "We just met," I reminded her. "I saw it in your features. Your face tells your life story." She stared at me, her mind clearly racing. She didn't want to believe a kid like me had these powers, but she couldn't ignore the facts. Finally, she took a gamble. "Can you actually fix my father's eyes?" "If I can't fix them, I won't charge you a cent," I said confidently. "But if I do, the fee is 2,000 yuan, not a penny less." I held up 2 fingers. She blinked, looking almost offended. 2,000. To her, that wasn't even enough to buy a single outfit. She had spent tens of millions on doctors. If I could actually cure him for the price of a cheap dinner, it was the bargain of a lifetime. 2,000 is nothing, she said, a small, cold smile touching her lips. "If you actually cure him, I'll give you 100,000. But if you fail, don't expect a dime." 100,000 yuan. My heart skipped a beat. To a fresh college grad like me, that was a fortune. I could buy my grandfather the best electric wheelchair money could buy. "Deal," I said. "I won't take a penny unless he sees again." She nodded and led me to her luxury car. As we drove toward the Yi villa, my stomach was doing somersaults. This was my first real case. If I messed this up, it wouldn't just be about the money. I'd lose my confidence. I'd probably give up on the shop entirely. Yi Mingyao didn't say a word the whole way. She kept her icy expression, staring out the window. I knew what she was thinking. She only brought me along because I was cheap and promised a refund. She was probably worried about what her family would say when she showed up with a master who looked like he belonged in a classroom. We pulled up to a massive 3-story European-style villa. It was stunning, surrounded by lush gardens and expensive landscaping. Must be nice to be rich, I thought. One day, I'd build a place like this for myself. She got out of the car without looking back. "Follow me. My father is inside." I followed her, feeling the weight of her silent judgment. I wasn't doing this for her ego. I was doing it for my grandfather. I swallowed my pride and kept walking. Inside, the villa was even more opulent. The floor was covered in a handmade Turkish cashmere carpet that probably cost more than my grandfather's entire shop. "Put on these slippers," she said, her voice sharp. "This carpet is incredibly expensive. Don't get it dirty. If my aunt sees a single footprint, she'll lose her mind." I took a deep breath, feeling the sting of the insult. Part of me wanted to turn around and walk out right then. But then I thought about the 100,000 yuan. I thought about the electric wheelchair. I bit my tongue, changed my shoes, and followed her deeper into the house. I thought changing into slippers would be the end of it. I was wrong. Just as I was about to step onto that precious carpet, a woman's cold, arrogant voice rang out from the top of the stairs. "Mingyao? Who is this man? He's dressed like a total beggar. Why did you bring someone like that into the Yi house?" Yi Mingyao jumped, startled by the sudden outburst. She looked up and saw her aunt, Yi Wushuang, walking down the staircase with a look of pure disgust. Panic flickered across Mingyao's face. "Auntie, he's a feng shui master," she stammered. "I brought him here to look at Dad's eyes." I frowned, my chest tightening with frustration. Sure, my clothes were cheap, but they were clean. Is that all it took for rich people to label someone a beggar? I had been willing to swallow my pride for that 100,000 yuan, but I wasn't going to let them trample my dignity into the dirt. This money wasn't worth it. I turned back toward the door, ready to change my shoes and leave this place behind. Yi Wushuang reached the bottom of the stairs and looked me up and down like I was a piece of trash. "Mingyao, are you stupid? This beggar is so young. He says he's a master, and you actually believe him? Look at him. Does he look like a master to you? He's clearly a con artist. Thank God I caught this in time, or you would have been scammed." I didn't want to stay a second longer. I hurriedly swapped the slippers for my own shoes and looked at Yi Mingyao. "Miss Yi, since your aunt doesn't trust me, I don't think I can help your father. I'll take my leave. Goodbye." Yi Mingyao didn't try to stop me. She was too afraid of upsetting her aunt. But as I stepped out the front door, that shrill, arrogant voice followed me. "Stop right there, you smelly beggar. Do you think the Yi family home is a place where you can just come and go as you please?" My face darkened. This woman was a nightmare. If I had known this family was this difficult, I never would have come. I stopped and turned to face her. "I haven't eaten your food, I haven't drunk your water, and I haven't taken a single needle from this house. Why can't I leave?" Yi Wushuang crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing as she checked to make sure Mingyao hadn't given me any money. Then she pointed at the slippers I had just taken off. "Those slippers cost me 200 yuan. You've made them dirty. You pay for them now, or you aren't leaving this property." My blood boiled. I hadn't earned a single cent, and now she wanted me to pay 200? That was a week's worth of food for me. There was no way I was giving her a dime. Before I could snap back, Yi Mingyao spoke up, her voice tinged with desperation. "Auntie, please. I'm the one who brought him here. It's just a pair of slippers. Let it go. Let him leave." Yi Wushuang rolled her eyes and let out a cold snort. She looked at me with pure loathing. "Fine. For Mingyao's sake, I'll let the money go. Now get out. You're polluting our air. If you ever show your face here again, I'll have your legs broken." I didn't argue. I just felt a bitter sense of self-mockery. This was the reality of the world. If you don't have money, people treat you like dirt. I realized then that the gates of the wealthy are not easy to enter. I made a silent vow to myself. I would never come back to the Yi house unless Yi Wushuang knelt on the ground and begged me. I sighed and started walking away when a car roared into the courtyard. It brushed past me so closely it almost knocked me over. The door opened, and a middle-aged man in a traditional green robe stepped out. He held a string of prayer beads, looking every bit the part of a refined scholar. Yi Wushuang's icy expression vanished instantly. She rushed forward with a syrupy smile. "Master Hu, you're finally here. Please come inside." "Miss Yi, my apologies for the wait," the man replied. He was Hu Yinsong, the vice president of the Qingzhou Metaphysics Association. I recognized him immediately. He was a minor celebrity who appeared on TV shows talking about feng shui and wellness. Back in college, I used to watch his programs when I was bored. As Yi Wushuang led him toward the door, Hu Yinsong glanced at the expensive carpet and smiled politely. "Miss Yi, this carpet looks quite valuable. Perhaps I should change into slippers so I don't soil it." "Master Hu, You're being far too polite. Yi Wushuang chirped. A man of your noble status. If you get our carpet a little dirty, it would be our family's honor. I stopped in my tracks, disgusted. This woman was the definition of a snob. She bowed and scraped for the powerful while treating everyone else like subhumans. Yi Mingyao looked relieved. She clearly thought her father was saved now that a real master was here. Compared to a famous vice president, I was nothing but a nameless kid. She hurried over to greet him. Welcome, President Hu. I watched them from a distance, feeling the weight of the humiliation. I had been asked to pay for slippers I barely touched, while this guy was being told it was an honor to ruin their carpet. Yi Wushuang glanced back at me one last time, her voice dripping with mockery. Mingyao, look. This is a real feng shui master. From head to toe, he has class. She spat on the ground in my direction. Look at the trash you brought home. He doesn't even have hair on his chin, yet he calls himself a master. What an embarrassment. I turned to walk away, not wanting to waste another breath on her, when a weak voice drifted out from the villa. Master Hu, thank you for coming. Please forgive me for not greeting you at the door. It was Yi Guqing, the head of the house. He was being supported by a maid as he stumbled out. I stopped and looked back at him. My eyes narrowed as I focused on his face. A thick, black aura of deathly energy was swirling around his eyes. It wasn't just his vision. The darkness was spreading to his neck, his legs, and his chest. He wasn't just going blind. He was dying. The black aura wasn't just around Yi Guqing's eyes. It was swirling around his throat, his legs, and his chest. I realized then that I was seeing this only because I'd opened my heavenly eye. To anyone else, he just looked sick. To me, he looked cursed. His blindness had nothing to do with a medical condition. He was possessed by an evil energy. If this continued, the darkness at his throat would make him mute. The darkness on his legs would make him a cripple. He wasn't just losing his sight. He was fading away. You stinking beggar, get out. Yi Wushuang's voice cut through my thoughts. She looked at me with pure disgust. Leave now, or I'll have someone break your legs. The humiliation stung. I felt like a fool for even trying to help. I turned to leave, but I stopped and looked back at Yi Mingyao. She was the only one who had shown me a shred of decency by not making me pay for those slippers. I'm going, I said, my voice cold. But before I do, I have a warning for Miss Yi. I looked Yi Mingyao straight in the eyes. Take good care of your father these next few days. If I'm right, within 3 days, something else will happen. He'll lose his voice, he won't be able to walk, and his lungs will start to fail. Shut up, Yi Mingyao shouted. Her face was red with anger. She clearly thought I was cursing her father out of spite. Li Chengfeng, you're hateful. We have no grudge against you. So why would you say such horrible things? Yi Wushuang stepped forward, her eyes murderous. Get out. If you say one more word, I'll have your tongue ripped out. I didn't stay to argue. I had tried to pay back a small debt of kindness, and they had spat on it. I walked out of the villa, my pace quick and my heart heavy. I had hoped to make enough money today to buy my grandfather an electric wheelchair and fix up our lives. Instead, I was leaving with nothing but insults. As I walked away, I heard Yi Guqing's weak voice lecturing his daughter from inside. Mingyao, there are so many scammers out there. Don't just bring anyone into our home. I felt a pang of regret. I had to take the bus back because I didn't have a ride anymore. Looking at the few bills left in my pocket, I realized that reopening Suiyuan Hall was going to be much harder than I thought. People saw my young face and immediately assumed I was a fraud. 2 days passed. A few people stopped by the shop, but as soon as they saw me sitting behind the desk, they turned around and left without saying a word. I was down to my last $10. If a customer didn't show up soon, I wouldn't even be able to afford a bowl of noodles. I was scrolling through my phone to pass the time when a news headline caught my eye. 2 young boys had drowned in the Qingqing Reservoir 3 days ago. Their bodies still hadn't been found, and the search teams were losing hope. It was a tragedy. Just as I sighed over the news, the door creaked open. A middle-aged couple stumbled in, looking exhausted and broken. Their eyes were bloodshot from crying. Sir, please. The woman sobbed before I could even speak. My son, he drowned in the reservoir. They can't find him. I just want to see him one last time. She broke down, clutching her husband's arm. Please help us find him. We'll pay whatever it takes. Just help us find our boy. I realized these were the parents from the news. They were desperate, wandering into any shop that looked like it might offer a miracle. "I'm so sorry," I said softly, "but I'm a feng shui practitioner, not a diver. You should trust the search teams. They have the equipment for this." The woman didn't listen. She dropped to her knees on the dusty floor, wailing, "Please, we've tried everything. No one can find him. I just want to bring him home." Looking at their grief, my heart gave in. I couldn't turn them away. "Fine," I sighed, helping them up. "I'll try, but I can't make any promises." I told them to go buy 2 gourds, some spirit money, incense, candles, and 2 roosters. While they ran those errands, I prepped my kit: yellow paper, cinnabar, a calligraphy brush, and my soul-calling bell. We drove out to the Qingxing Reservoir. The father, Wang Jun, told me the story on the way. His son had been swimming with friends when one boy slipped into the deep water. His son had tried to save him, but both went under. They had already spent a fortune on spiritual masters and mediums, but everyone had been a fake. They had wandered into my shop by pure chance, driven by a gut feeling. When we arrived, the scene was bleak. The reservoir was massive, nearly 30 meters deep in some spots. Divers were already in the water, and boats were dragging nets across the bottom. On the shore, another set of grieving parents stood waiting. It was time to see if my skills were as real as my grandfather always said they were. I stood on the shore of the reservoir and looked around. The air was heavy with grief. A man sat on the dirt, his eyes dry and vacant, staring at the water like a hollow shell. This was Yang Dongming, the other father. Wang Jun walked over to him, his voice trembling. "Brother Yang, any news? Did they find the kids?" Yang Dongming didn't even look up. He just let out a dull grunt, his gaze never leaving the surface of the lake. He was too broken to care about who I was or why I was there. I didn't want to waste any more time. Every second counted in a place like this. "Brother Wang, let's go," I said. "It's time to find the children." I led them to a flat stretch of bank and told them to set the roosters down. This was the spot. But before I could start the ritual, a man in a uniform marched over. It was Zhang Junjie, the captain of the search and rescue team. He looked me up and down, his eyes full of suspicion. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" he asked. Wang Jun jumped in before I could answer. "Captain Zhang, this is Mr. Li from Suiyuan Hall. I brought him here to help us find our sons." Zhang Junjie's brow furrowed. He looked at my face. I was barely in my 20s, and scoffed. "Brother Wang, are you kidding me? You've been scammed so many times already. How can you fall for this again?" He turned to me, his chest puffed out with indignation. "Listen, kid, these families have suffered enough. You're really going to come here and prey on them? Don't you have a conscience? My team has high-tech equipment, and we haven't found a trace in days. What are you going to do?" He pointed at the roosters and the gourds on the ground, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Don't tell me you're going to find those boys with a couple of chickens and some vegetables." "Yes," I said. I kept my voice calm. I wasn't offended. He was just trying to protect the families from another fraud. Wang Jun sighed. I could see the doubt creeping into his eyes now that the adrenaline was wearing off. He realized just how young I looked. I gave him a small, reassuring smile. "Don't worry," I told Zhang Junjie. "If I don't find the children, I won't take a single penny." The captain's expression softened slightly. If I wasn't asking for money, I couldn't be a typical con artist. "Fine," he laughed. "As long as it's free, play your games." Wang Jun stepped forward, his voice earnest. "Mr. Li, don't listen to him. Whether you find them or not, I won't let you leave empty-handed." By now, Yang Dongming and their relatives had gathered around. They whispered among themselves, most of them convinced I was a fake. I ignored the noise. I placed the 2 roosters by the water's edge and began chanting a low, rhythmic mantra. The roosters, which had been flapping and struggling, suddenly went still. They crouched on the dirt, their eyes fixed intently on the water. I planted 3 sticks of incense in the mud and tied red threads from the roosters' heads to the burning sticks. I pulled out a stack of spirit money, split it into 2 piles, and set them ablaze. "Smoke and mirrors," Zhang Junjie muttered, crossing his arms. I didn't blink. As the paper turned to ash, I shook my soul-calling bell. The crisp tingling echoed across the silent reservoir. My chanting grew louder. Suddenly, both roosters jerked their heads up and let out 2 sharp, piercing crows toward the center of the lake. The timing was right. I grabbed the 2 gourds, smeared a drop of rooster blood on the tops, and tied red strings around their necks. I placed them in front of the birds and finished the soul-guiding incantation. The roosters' eyes slowly closed. Their heads slumped to the side. Just like that, they were dead. The crowd gasped. Wang Jun turned pale. "Mr. Lee, what happened? Are they dead?" "Keep your voice down," I whispered. "Tell me the names and birth dates of the boys." Now, they didn't hesitate. I took my cinnabar brush and wrote the details onto 2 soul-guiding talismans. I burned the charms, letting the ashes fall directly onto the gourds. Then, I formed a hand seal and pointed at the water. "Rise," I shouted. The gourds didn't just roll. They defied gravity, leaping into the air and splashing into the reservoir. The onlookers stood frozen. Zhang Junjie stepped forward, his eyes wide, looking for some hidden string or mechanical trick. But there were no strings. The gourds began to move. They didn't drift with the current. They cut through the waves, moving upstream against the wind. It was impossible. It defied every law of physics. The search boats in the middle of the lake stopped what they were doing to watch the 2 gourds zip past them. Finally, the gourds reached the center of the reservoir and stopped dead. No matter how the waves hit them, they remained anchored to a single spot, as if nailed to the water. "Mr. Lee," Yang Dongming cried out, his voice cracking. "Why did they stop? Are they under there?" I nodded gravely. "They are. But I need the parents to step back. Please, leave the shore for a moment." "Why?" Wang Jun asked, tears streaming down his face. "The children won't come out if you're here," I said softly. "They don't want you to see them like this. They don't want to see your pain." With the help of their relatives, the sobbing parents were led away. The moment they were out of sight, the 2 gourds suddenly vanished. They didn't drift away, they sank straight down into the depths. Zhang Junjie couldn't believe it. He ran to the water's edge, his boots splashing into the mud. "Where did they go?" he yelled to his team on the boats. "What happened to the gourds?" "Captain," a team member shouted back, his voice trembling. "The gourds, they just got sucked under." Zhang Junjie stood there, his face a mask of pure shock. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. A gourd has incredible buoyancy. Without some massive external force, it's physically impossible for one to sink. It defied every law of science. "Divers, get down there now." Zhang Junjie barked at the team on the boat. "Find out where those gourds went." 2 divers, already geared up, flicked on their underwater flashlights and plunged into the dark water. They followed the path of the sinking gourds, cameras ready. They didn't have to swim far. The gourds weren't dropping like stones. They were descending slowly, almost deliberately. The divers exchanged a look of pure disbelief through their masks. They held up their underwater cameras, capturing the impossible. 2 gourds, filled with nothing but air, pulling themselves down into the abyss. Up on the boat, the rest of the rescue team huddled around the monitor. These men had spent years pulling bodies out of the water. They had seen strange things, but never this. Zhang Junjie had the feed patched directly to his phone. He stared at the screen, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and wonder. "This isn't scientific," he whispered. "How can they sink? It's too eerie. If I wasn't seeing this with my own eyes, I'd think it was a trick." 10 minutes passed. On the screen, the gourds finally settled onto the thick, black silt at the very bottom of the reservoir. The divers swept their flashlights in wide arcs. The beams cut through the murky water, but there was nothing. No bodies. No children. Zhang Junjie looked up from his phone, thrusting the screen toward me. "Mr. Lee, where are the kids?" "There's nothing there." I didn't even glance at the phone. I kept my eyes fixed on the shimmering surface of the lake. "Don't be in such a hurry," I said calmly. "Keep watching." As I spoke, I noticed something. Deep beneath the waves, a faint, sickly green glow was moving. It flickered in and out of sight, circling. My pulse quickened. I knew exactly what that was. There was something unclean in this reservoir. 3 or 4 minutes later, the screen erupted with movement. Zhang Junjie let out a sharp yelp, nearly dropping his phone in the mud. The silt on the lake floor began to churn. Suddenly, a small head poked out from the mud. At that exact moment, the gourds began to rise. The divers backed away, their hearts hammering against their ribs. They were used to corpses, but watching a body emerge from the muck like a germinating seed was something else entirely. The gourds acted like balloons filled with lead, slowly hauling the first child upward. As the first body rose, the divers noticed something even more chilling. A pale, translucent hand was clamped tightly around the first child's ankle. The second child was underneath, being pulled up by the first. When the flashlights hit their faces, the rescue team gasped. The children's mouths, noses, and ears were packed with silt. Their eyes were wide open, frozen in a look of absolute, soul-shattering terror. Whatever they had seen before they drowned, it wasn't of this world. The gourds drifted upward with agonizing slowness. It took 20 minutes for them to break the surface. The moment they hit the air, both gourds split wide open with a sharp crack. The two pale bodies bobbed quietly in the water. The divers surfaced shortly after, gasping for air as their teammates hauled them onto the boat. "That's the craziest thing I've ever seen," one diver panted, his face white. "I've been doing this for decades. Whoever found these kids with gourds, that man is a true master." The team was buzzing. They wanted to know the physics, the trick, the secret. But there was no secret. Only the old ways. On the shore, Zhang Junjie looked at the bodies and then back at me. He swallowed hard, his previous arrogance completely gone. "Mr. Li, I'm sorry for what I said before. Please, forgive my ignorance." "It's fine," I said, my eyes still scanning the water. That green glow hadn't left. It was circling the spot where the bodies had been. "You meant well? But listen to me. Stay away from this reservoir from now on. There's something bad down there." He nodded frantically. "I understand. Anything else?" "Dig a hole," I said, gesturing to the remains of my ritual. "Bury those two chickens." "Right away," he promised. The way he looked at me now was different. It wasn't just respect, it was awe. I didn't stay for the thanks or the inevitable questions. My heart felt heavy. I turned and walked away without mentioning the fee we had discussed. "Mr. Li, wait." Zhang Junjie ran after me. "Can I at least get your number?" "Forget it," I replied over my shoulder. "I don't want to deal with things like this anymore." By the time I made it back to the old city district, the sun was dipping below the horizon. I had about 15 yuan left in my pocket. I stopped at a roadside stall, slurped down a bowl of cheap noodles, and headed back to Suiyuan Hall. As I approached the shop, I froze. Two women were standing by the door. It was Yi Wushuang and Yi Mingyao, the same two women who had insulted me and kicked me out of the Yi villa just days ago. My stomach twisted. I had a bad feeling they weren't here to apologize. I tried to turn a corner to avoid them, but Yi Wushuang's sharp eyes caught me. You damn beggar," she screamed, her voice echoing down the street. "Where the hell have you been? I've been waiting here for hours." I felt my jaw tighten. Some things never changed. Since they already saw me, there was no point in hiding. I looked at the woman screaming at me, a total shrew. I didn't feel like being polite. "I'm not your father," I snapped, my voice cold. "Where I go is none of your damn business." Yi Wushuang looked like she was about to explode. She probably wasn't used to anyone talking back to her like that. She stepped forward, pointing a finger right in my face. "You stinking beggar," she shrieked. "You dare call yourself my father? I'll tear your mouth off." She didn't just stop at words. She swung a hand at my face. Luckily, I was faster. I jumped back before she could connect. My temper was rising now. "Listen, lady," I growled. "Don't push it. If you try to hit me again, I'm hitting back." You call me a lady?" She looked offended, as if the word itself was an insult. "And you'd hit me? I'll find someone to break your legs for this." Yi Wushuang was in her 30s and actually quite beautiful, but her personality was toxic. She was controlling, arrogant, and clearly hadn't had a boyfriend in a very long time. She raised her fists, ready to scrap with me right there on the sidewalk. "Auntie, please. Stop it." Yi Mingyao grabbed her arm, her voice frantic. "My dad is still lying in the hospital." Yi Wushuang stopped, huffing and puffing. She glared at me with pure hatred. "You wait, you little brat. We'll settle this later." I rolled my eyes. I'd never met a woman this aggressive in my life. If a man ever decided to marry her, he'd deserve a medal just for showing up. Yi Mingyao looked at me for a long moment. Her eyes were different now, not filled with pride, but with desperation. She took 2 steps toward me and bowed slightly. "Mr. Li, I'm sorry," she said softly. "The other day was my fault. My aunt and I shouldn't have mocked you. Please, be the bigger person. Forgive us." I was stunned. Was the sun rising from the west today? Why were these two suddenly at my doorstep offering apologies? But I wasn't in a forgiving mood. "Miss Yi, I said flatly. If I slap you twice and then say sorry, does your face stop hurting? Some things can't be fixed with an apology. Just leave. Seeing you too makes my head ache. I pulled out my keys, unlocked the door to sway you on hall, and stepped inside. I didn't want to deal with them. Mr. Lee, please. Yi Mingyao followed me to the threshold. Please let my father go. If you're angry, take it out on me. I was the one who insulted you at the villa. It has nothing to do with him. Please, take back the curse. Let him get better. I stopped and turned around, completely confused. Take back what? What are you talking about? Yi Mingyao's eyes welled up with tears. She started explaining what had happened since I left their house. The day I walked out of the Yi villa, I had warned them that Yi Guqing's throat, legs, and chest would have problems. At the time, they thought I was just talking nonsense. But within 3 days, it all happened. His right leg went lame. His lungs started failing, causing him to cough uncontrollably. And then, his voice vanished. He was a mute. Panicked, Yi Wushuang had called in a master named Hu Yensong. After looking at Yi Guqing, this Hu guy claimed that he had been cursed by a professional. Naturally, they immediately thought of me. Everything I predicted had come true exactly as I said. Hu Yensong told them that the only way to break a curse is to find the person who cast it and beg for their forgiveness. That's why they were here. I felt a massive headache coming on. I had tried to be helpful by giving them a warning, and now they thought I was some dark sorcerer. This was why people said, trouble comes from the mouth. Miss Yi, you've got it all wrong, I said, my voice weary. Your father's condition has nothing to do with me. Curses? That's ridiculous. I didn't wait for a response. I slammed the door shut. I could hear them outside. Yi Mingyao was crying, but Yi Wushuang was back to her old self. She started kicking my door. You beggar. Don't lie to us, she screamed. You predicted the leg, the lungs, and the throat. How could it be anything else? You just want money, don't you? Fine. Name your price. The Yi family will pay whatever you want. Just lift the curse. I leaned my head against the door and sighed. I had walked right into this mess. Even if I wanted to lift the curse, I couldn't. It didn't exist. The noise outside continued. One woman begging, the other threatening. It was driving me crazy. I ripped the door open again. For God's sake, will you shut up? I yelled. I'm saying this one last time. I don't know how to cast curses. Your father's illness has nothing to do with me. Leave now, or I'm calling the police. If you didn't curse him, how did you know exactly what would happen? Yi Mingyao sobbed. Yi Wushuang pushed past her, hands on her hips. Just give us a number, brat. How much money do you want? I looked at them, realizing they wouldn't believe the truth if I screamed it at them. They were convinced I was the villain. Fine, I said, my voice dropping to a low, serious tone. Miss Yi, let me tell you the real reason your father is like this. It has nothing to do with me. I told them, my voice flat. His condition is either fate, or your family's feng shui is completely rotten. I turned my gaze toward Yi Wushuang. I was ready to snap back at her insults, but the words died in my throat. A thick, black mist, a deadly aura of sha qi, was swirling around her eyes and neck. I realized right then that this woman was next. A cold smile spread across my face. I couldn't help the bit of spite in my voice. Miss Yi, I have some bad news. If I'm seeing this right, your eyes and throat will fail you within 3 days. You'll end up exactly like your brother. The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted it. I raised my hand and slapped myself hard across the face. Damn it, my big mouth was going to get me killed. I wanted to cut my own tongue out and throw it away. But the damage was done. Yi Wushuang was right in the middle of pointing at my nose and screaming when her vision suddenly blurred. I saw her blink rapidly. Then, her eyes went wide with terror. Everything around her had turned pitch black. Mingyao, she stammered, her voice shaking. What's happening? Why did the lights go out? I can't see anything. Yi Mingyao looked at the bright streetlights nearby, then back at her aunt. Her face turned ghostly pale. She realized something was horribly wrong. Auntie, your eyes. Yi Wushuang spiraled into a panic. She started clawing at the air, grabbing blindly for anything she could touch. I'm blind. Mingyao, I'm really blind. Take me to Master Hu. I don't want to be a cripple. She was hysterical. She couldn't accept it. But Yi Mingyao wasn't looking at her aunt anymore. She was staring at me with pure, poisonous hatred. To her, this wasn't a prediction. It was a curse. I had said it, and then it happened. You're a monster, Li Changfeng, she sobbed, her voice trembling with resentment. My family has no grudge against you. First you cursed my father, and now my aunt. You turned them into cripples. If you have a problem, come at me. Don't hurt them. She gripped my arm, her eyes pleading and threatening all at once. Lift the curse. Do it now, or the Yi family will make you pay a price you can't imagine. She didn't wait for an answer. She grabbed her aunt and began to lead her away, heading off to find their master Hu. Yi Wushuang stumbled along, still screaming back at the shop. You beggar. Just you wait. We aren't done with you. I watched them disappear into the night, feeling completely drained. I was in deep now. No matter how I explained it, they would never believe me. I slapped myself 2 more times for good measure. My big mouth was a curse of its own. I knew the truth, though. The blindness and the muteness were coming from their ancestral grave. If that feng shui wasn't fixed soon, Yi Mingyao would be the next one to fall. I sighed and locked the door of Sui Yuan Hall. I had been open for days and hadn't made a single cent. Instead, I had managed to offend one of the most powerful families in the city. I looked at my reflection in the window. I had less than 20 yuan to my name. I had been living on plain steamed buns and pickles for a week. Maybe being a feng shui master wasn't for me. Maybe I should just go work in a factory. At least there, I wouldn't starve. I tossed and turned on my thin mattress, worrying about how I'd pay for breakfast. Eventually, I drifted into a fitful sleep. I don't know how long I was out before I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. I groaned and rolled over. Who was banging on my door in the middle of the night? I forced myself up and pulled the door open, but the sight waiting for me made my blood run cold. 2 small children stood on my doorstep. They were completely naked and dripping wet, their skin pale and translucent. I froze. I knew exactly what I was looking at. This was a midnight visitation. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. I have no grudge against you, I said, keeping my voice firm. Why have you come to my door? The 2 children didn't look angry. They looked at me and smiled, a sweet, innocent smile that felt incredibly sad. Don't be afraid, big brother, they said in unison. We came to say thank you. Thank you for pulling us out of the water. Because of you, our mommy and daddy got to see us one last time. They lowered their heads, looking small and heartbroken. They were so young. They hadn't even had a chance to live before the water took them. My fear vanished, replaced by a heavy weight in my chest. It was the right thing to do, I whispered. Don't worry about it. I hope you can move on soon. I hope you can find your way back to your parents in the next life. The children nodded, tears shimmering in their eyes. Big brother, they asked softly, can you give our parents a message for us? Tell me, I said. I'll do it. Tell them to wait for us, they said. Tell them we're coming back to find them. I felt a tear prick my own eye as I nodded. I promise. I'll tell them. I watched them stand there for a moment longer before they slowly faded into the mist. I stood in the doorway for a long time, whispering a silent prayer that they would find their way home.